Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Maps and Graps. As always, I'm your host, Lyric Swain, and I want to start off by saying I apologize for not having an episode out last week. I was in DC for some work stuff, and I guess like the follow up from all those forest fires in Canada coming down, and the air quality was crap, and my voice sounded like a grown man for a few days, and I decided that sitting here and recording for a long time was just not a good idea while I sounded like that. So my apologies for not being on, but I'm back now. There is so much to talk about, and I would be remiss without starting with like the most burning thing because I'm recording this episode later than usual. So for me, Dynamite just ended. And that ending of this Dynamite this week was generational. Absolutely perfect, fantastic, amazing. So, the main event was already the Hung Bucks finally teaming up at AEW versus the Blackpool Combat Club, which was already coded for me. Like that's already booked for me. Great match, fast-paced trios match that I literally couldn't keep still. It was awesome. By the way, the entire card was awesome from top to bottom. There were no bad matches. Everything was great. It was a great episode, to mark that Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. was where it all started for Dynamite. It just absolutely incredible. Some great storyline development for Forbidden Door. Awesome stuff. Like next week, we're going to get Orange Cassidy and Shibata versus Zack Sabre Jr. And Daniel Garcia. In addition to, we're probably getting Orange Cassidy versus Zack Sabre Jr. at Forbidden Door. It's going to be MJF versus Tanahashi at Forbidden Door. It's going to be Sonata versus Jungle Boy at Forbidden Door. I'm with Hook in his corner, and I'm almost positive Jungle Boy is going to turn on Hook, but that's just a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. We had some great stuff. They set the Collision card for later this weekend. Just some really good stuff across the board. But that main event, like I said, the trios match was already more than enough for me. Then I knew somebody was going to run in. I had my guesses on who, but when Eddie Kingston came out, I screamed. The scream I scrumped. And he had that face off with Mox. Oh my gosh, like the history with those two, and then Eddie won't let them fight Mox, but then Mox start pushing Eddie, and then Eddie in Mox's face, and then everything starts going to hell, and then Takeshita pops up. He's in that jacket again, and he starts cleaning house. Then Kenny Omega shows up. I hear the battle cry. And also, he's doing this V trigger in the world's tightest jeans. Don't know how he pulled that one off. And then, right when he's about to really, really, really go crazy, go stupid, and all, Will Ospreay shows up out of nowhere. And I mean, he hits the hidden blade. Time goes by, a little bit of time goes by. Then he hits the Stormbreaker, and then right in the last seconds before the feed closes out the show, you can literally see the copyright trademark credit at the bottom. He hits Kenny with the hidden blade again. I'm recording this at it's 10:55, which means it went off 55 minutes ago. I spent that first 30 minutes screaming. Like I've just been screaming, just straight screaming, for a very long time. I will say for us AEW fans, these last couple weeks have been a little, questionable outside of the BCC Elite stuff, of course. Like I love that, but the feeling has been restored. I'm very excited about Forbidden Door. Very excited about everything, honestly. Rampage seems to be going to be great this week. They said Will Ospreay is going to be on Rampage. Collision had a really, really solid card. And yeah, so very excited about everything that's happening on the AEW side heading into Forbidden Door. But Today, the topic of discussion is a lot of the New Japan stuff that's happening ahead of Forbidden Door. So, because I skipped a week, there are so many things to talk about, namely Dominion all together again, as well as the announcement of the G1 Climax. And so I'm just going to flat out be honest. I am not getting into a full G1 preview here. Like, because I think that's a whole episode of its own. And also, we're a month out. And also, there's so many people. Like, there's like 32 people competing. And yeah, don't have the bandwidth to be here all day for that. And because 9 times out of 10 on this podcast, I'm going to be discussing the G1 for probably the next 2 to 3 months. But I do want to, probably going to finish off this episode by just, giving some preliminary reactions to what I've seen. We've already gotten the block breakdown. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. And let's start with Dominion. Dominion was crazy. Obviously, there were a few standout matches, but honestly, there were no bad matches. I enjoyed basically the entire card. And at Dominion, I think that everybody did great. I think that this Dominion marked a big shift for New Japan, as a lot of their cards this year have, and really focusing on the younger talent. We saw, the junior heavyweight titles changed hands, went back to Akira and TJP. We saw Zack Sabre Jr. retain against Jeff Cobb in their rematch. We saw Bishamon regain the IWGP heavyweight belts, as well as pick up the NJPW strong belts, tag belts, up against House of Torture, thank God, and Aaron Hanare and Great Khan. That was a pretty good match, though. We saw the winner of the Best of the Super Juniors tournament, Master Wato, take on Hiromu Takahashi in a pretty good match, and Master Wato lost, which I felt was the right call. Obviously, he's made a lot of great strides in the junior heavyweight division. Obviously, New Japan believes in him. If they didn't, they wouldn't have let him win, the Best of the Super Juniors tournament, especially after such a stacked tournament as they had. I can't say enough great things about the Best of the Super Juniors 30 that happened this year. But I do think that there are still a few pieces missing before, Wato is ready to beat the true ace of the division in Hiromu. And also, like I've said on this podcast a million times before, Hiromu Takahashi's reign as IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion ever since he won the belt back at Wrestle Kingdom has been phenomenal. I know that he has a goal of, reaching and exceeding 12 defenses, and I really hope that he makes it because he's been phenomenal. Every single match that he has feels like a great deal. The charisma, the personality, just the tenacity that he brings to all of his matches. Like, I mean, he really is one of those wrestlers who can convince me that he is dying. Every single match, he sells his ass off. He just does such a great job. And so I am really pleased with his run. I'm glad that it's not over yet. I'm excited to see what's going to happen for him at Forbidden Door. There better be a match for him on the card at Forbidden Door. Everybody has, knock on wood, to this point, done pretty good about injuries. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see. Hope he gets a marquee match. I know a lot of people have wanted him to have a match against Darby Allin. I personally would not be mad at it. I don't know. Like, I wonder if they might push him with LIJ. I hope not. Like, I know that they haven't really announced any multi-man matches for Forbidden Door yet, but I know that they're probably coming. And I think that there's more than enough members of LIJ to go around where you don't need Hiromu to be in the multi-man match. But I've been really pleased so far, like I said, with his reign, and I hope it continues. We also had the amazing. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm just going to go ahead and go straight to the main event and then come back to this match because this was my personal favorite, even though the main event was great. So in the main event, we had Sonata versus Yota Tsuji. Up to this point, we knew nothing about Yota Tsuji. He just kind of pops up out of thin air. He did no warm up matches before this. He did no interviews before this. He kind of like popped up at the press conference. That was it. But then he shows up at Dominion, and my God, he is incredible. I kind of knew that already. When I was in London for spring break, I got to see him wrestle for Rev Pro, and while he was still on excursion, and I remember looking at him, I was like, this guy has so much charisma. And then looked him up, and I saw that he was a young lion. And I'm like, why has New Japan not called him back yet from excursion? He's like, he has it all. Like I could even see that at that small Rev Pro show. Like he's a total package. Like he has charisma, even the way how he was interacting with the audience. Like he's a great talker. He's just pretty awesome. And so, and obviously by that point, I already knew that they called Shota and Ren back already, as well as, Clark Connors and Kevin Knight and all these other young lions. So I'm just like, what happened to Yoda? And then obviously a couple weeks after that, it's the big announcement. Obviously they did those teasers, those dragon teasers, and then it turns out to be him at Wrestling Dantaku. But absolutely fabulous match. He didn't win here, which I do think is the right call. I've actually been pretty pleased with the Sonata title reign so far, and I think that Sonata winning was the right call here. But I also think that Yota Tsuji did not lose anything in defeat. He looked like an absolute superstar. And I think that a lot of important seeds were planted, specifically around his inclusion into LIJ. So if you watch the match, you saw beforehand when LIJ comes out to be there for his match, how Naito typically leads the LIJ salute, but this time Yota Tsuji, his first day out here, he leads the LIJ salute, puts his fist up, and then you can see everybody looking at each other like, do we even follow along with this? They do it eventually, but when Tsuji loses, LIJ leaves, nowhere to be found. And it's very interesting how they all head out. And obviously Naito's leading the charge there. So it's very interesting how that dynamic has been working. The seeds have been planted that we're going to probably see Yota Tsuji face Naito before, I would say, by January 4th, 2024, Wrestle Kingdom. I could see it for sure. And I think it's going to be great. But going back to my favorite match on the Dominion card was that trios match. And also, I would like to say, I don't know if it was on anybody's bingo card, but shout out to all these amazing singles wrestlers like Okada, Tanahashi, Mox, Kenny, like who have just been revolutionizing trios wrestling. So trio / 6-man wrestling in 2023. I have had a blast watching so many of these trio 6-man matches, both in AEW as well as New Japan, both stateside and in Japan. Great stuff. So you had Kazuchika Okada, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Tomohiro Ishii, the current never 6-man openweight tag champions, versus Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli in his New Japan debut. And also to note, it was Jon Moxley's first time wrestling in Japan since 2019, I believe. And they were teaming up with, obviously, Mox's young boy, Shota Umino. Fantastic match. I can't say enough great things about it. I'm not sure which match I loved more, that match or the match that happened at New Japan Resurgence, which was Okada, Ishii, and Rocky Romero versus Mox, Yuta, and Shota. But just fantastic across the board. I obviously, the story is not over with any of these guys. Clearly, Okada has beef with literally everybody, to be quite honest, but specifically has beef one with the Blackpool Combat Club because he'll be facing Bryan Danielson at Forbidden Door, which was announced after this match. which was super cool in the video. And Brian was like, you're used to making it rain, but with me, you're gonna be in the desert. Um, Fantastic wordplay there. And then you have Okada beefing with Shota Umino, as well as everybody else from Generation Z. So that's pretty fun. And yeah, I just love that match so much. I think that everybody's playing their roles so well, and everybody's having a blast. And I love it because it's allowing one new faces to shine in singles, competition, both in AEW as well as New Japan. But it's also really revolutionizing um, trio 6-man wrestling, and because I think a lot of times when you put big time wrestlers in a team, a lot of time it's felt like a demotion. But I feel like all of these guys feel just as, if not more important than they ever have in a very long time. And so that's been super cool. So moving on from Dominion, that we had so many great matches. And as you see, one of the great shots from Suji versus Sonata, great shot from Hiromu versus Watto, Big Watto, as I like to call him, as well as the infamous shot of Claudio Castagnoli swinging Kazuchika Okada for his life. Absolutely amazing. But the real the next big thing that happened in the New Japan land was All Together again. The entire card was pretty decent. It was a fun watch. I will say most of the matches are not super duper duper memorable. However, this 6-man tag main event was worth the every penny, the price of admission, watching the entire thing. It was fantastic. I will also say that a honorable mention goes to that match, that Chris Ridgway and Sean Legacy versus Zack Sabre Jr. and Kosei Fujita TMDK tag match. That was great, and I think that we're going to probably hopefully see Zack Sabre Jr. versus Chris Ridgway from Noah super soon. I would like to see it, but we had a lot of moving parts here. So you had Kaito Kiyomiya representing Pro Wrestling Noah, Kento Miyahara representing All Japan Pro Wrestling, Hiroshi Tanahashi representing New Japan Pro Wrestling versus Kazuchika Okada representing New Japan Pro Wrestling, Yuma Oyaji representing All Japan Pro Wrestling, and my favorite, Kano, representing Pro Wrestling Noah. There were a lot of underlying storylines here. For example, Kano talks shit about everybody. He hates everybody. I have it in my head. I want him and Eddie Kingston to just kind of kick it. I don't know if they would be friends. I don't know if they would be enemies, but one thing they do is they call their enemies out, because in this pre-press conference, Kano held everybody accountable, talking shit about Tanahashi, talking shit about everybody. A lot of us did not know how him and Okada were going to get along, but they did somehow, some way, who knew? Obviously, then you have another storyline in the sense of Hiroshi Tanahashi and Kazuchika Okada. Obviously, they were longtime rivals, but right now they're tag team partners and they hold a championship together in the Never 6-man open weight championship. So that's a very interesting, being on opposite sides. You have the All Japan wrestlers who know that they're coming into this as the least known people on this card, and All Together again. Obviously, New Japan is king. Noah is in second place, is being very well known, and All Japan right now is like a distant third. However, these guys really held their own, especially Kento Miyahara, the ace of All Japan Pro Wrestling. And of course, you had this storyline of Kaito Kiyomiya and Kazuchika Okada, because, to be quite frank, Okada has been whipping Kaito Kiyomiya's ass all year long. This all started back at the Muda last. Well, yeah, that was at the Muda Great Muda Final Bye Bye show earlier this year. Obviously, there was a 6-man tag match. Kaito Kiyomiya goes straight after Okada and just keeps going after him, going after him. At the time, he was GHC, heavyweight champion. At the time, if I'm not mistaken, yes, Okada was the IWGP heavyweight champion. Kaito felt like he could go after Okada. He calls Okada out. Originally, Okada doesn't answer. He's like, you're not worth my time. Then Okada pulls up at a Noah show, knocks him out, and then accepts his challenge. And then at the Kaiji Muto Pro Wrestling Last Love show, they have a match, and Okada really beats him like he stole something. And it was very uncomfortable. I've watched that match numerous times, and you can only feel bad for Kaito. And then right after he loses his title to Jake Lee, he's had a very hard first half of 2023. And so he's looking for redemption. This tag match was amazing, fantastic. There were so many different storylines here. Keno's going after Tanahashi. Obviously, Kaito's going after Okada. Everybody's just going after each other. And I think this was one of the best trios matches of the year, too. I put it up there with that match. Those matches that I mentioned from Resurgence and Dominion. But yeah, I loved it. A lot of times it's a hard sell to have just a random quote unquote 6-man main event, a big show, but this one worked perfectly. And I think that a lot of, recurring stories came out of it. And so I'm very much so a fan of this. Obviously, Okada, Kano, and Ayagi's team got the win. And you see that everybody celebrated at the end. You had all the participants as well as the grandchildren of Antonio Inoki. They all celebrated at the end. Okada did the 1, 2, 3 da. But one thing that you notice one person that you notice isn't there is Kaito Kiyomiya, because after he lost, he went to the back and he was very upset. So, and rightfully so. But he didn't want to hang. We get it. And ever since, obviously, New Japan is getting ready for Forbidden Door, but New Japan is also getting ready for the G1 Classic. There's been a few house shows in between, and on the first road to the New Japan Road show, the house show, obviously heading towards the G1 Classic, there was a match. So there was LIJ versus Just 5 Guys. I feel like these guys have wrestled a million times since Sonata left LIJ to join Just 4 Guys at the time, now Just 5 Guys. But obviously in Yota Tsuji's spot, Titan was in that spot while he was still here from CMLL, but he's now returned back to Mexico. Obviously, Yota Tsuji seems to be their permanent 5th member. I was very intrigued to see how this would go, because I didn't know I didn't know how Yota Tsuji was going to fit in this dynamic after Dominion, where clearly there was some tension there. Obviously, like I said, LIJ walked out on him, and then he went for the pose. It didn't kind of go well. But in this particular match, that was their first time all teaming together, and it went really well. So it was an elimination match, and Yota Tsuji ends up being the sole survivor in getting the win for the entire team. And as you can see, it looks like LIJ is particularly happy, Hiromu's always happy. I love him. But yeah, so it looks like he's happy. I can't confirm nor deny. However, I think that it was also pretty obvious that there's still, I'm not going to call it exactly tension, but there's still some apprehension there. You can see as they were leaving the ring between Naito and not Hiromu, sorry, but Yota Tsuji. And so I think, like I said, I think that's going to be a very, very interesting dynamic that we're going to see in New Japan going forward, and as well as in LIJ going forward, especially as we head into the G1. And so this G1 field is huge. Like I said, it is 32 guys, and we have 4 different blocks. Naito is not very happy about it. You can look up his comments. He is not very happy about how many people are in here. But I do think that this year's G1 Climax um, has a lot of opportunities, one for some really great matches, but also for some really great stories. And there are 2 entrants from outside of New Japan that I'm very excited about, and that is Eddie Kingston representing AEW, as well as Kaito Kiyomiya representing Pro Wrestling Noah. So super cool stuff. I'm excited to see it. These are some of my initial thoughts heading into the different blocks. For example, A block has Sonata, Chase Owens, Hikuleo, Ren Narita, Shota Umino, Yota Tsuji, Gabe Kidd, Kaito Kiyomiya. This is the Young Boys block. Very much so. There are only two people in this block who have actually been in the G1 Climax before, and that's Sonata and Chase Owens. Obviously, nobody expects Chase Owens to win. I'm very interested to see what happens with Sonata. And also, all the young boys are in this. Well, not all, but most of them are in this. The returning young lions are in here. So that's going to be very interesting stuff. I think that the most interesting matchups are obviously going to be that eventual Sonata Yota Tsuji rematch, especially after how good the first match was and also how close Yota Tsuji got to beating Sonata in that first match. I think that Ren Narita versus Shota Umino is going to be very interesting just because as much as they both hate Okada, it's very clear that they hate each other too. And so all of these guys, well, at least 3 of these guys in this block, Ren Narita, Shota Umino, as well as Kaito Kiyomiya, clearly have the goal of being the person to dethrone Okada as top dog. And all 3 of them are really out for blood. I think Kaito Kiyomiya versus Yota Tsuji is going to be a very interesting match because both are clearly being positioned as the ace of their respective promotions, the future ace of their respective promotions, as well as Kaito Kiyomiya versus Sonata, just because Kaito Kiyomiya is a former world champion in Pro Wrestling Noah, former GHC world champion. And so I'm very interested to see how that match turns out. In B block, we have what I like to call one of the, well, no, I call this kind of like a mix. So we have a lot of experienced people. However, we had a lot of people who just probably have not won before and may not ever win, except for obviously a big win, which is Okada. So you have Okada, we have Yoshihashi, we have Taichi, we have Kenta, we have Great Okan, we have Tangaloa, who's coming back, haven't seen him in a while, as well as El Phantasmo, his second as a member of the heavyweight division. And so I think that this is going to be very interesting. You have a few members of the United Empire in here, which is very interesting. You have El Phantasmo, who is in here as a lone wolf for the first time. He's not in a faction because after being exiled from David Finlay's Bullet Club, which is very interesting. And also, he lost to David Finlay for the Never Openweight Championship at Dominion. So it's very interesting, going to be interesting to see what's next for him and how well he performs, as well as Okada. Obviously, 9 times out of 10, he will not win this year, but it is very clear that he is the gatekeeper. And beating him is a huge sign of progress, as well as it's a huge feather in your cap to say that you beat Okada in the G1 Climax tournament. So, and obviously, Will Ospreay has been out for blood and he is trying to climb his way back to the top. I'm interested to see how both Will Ospreay and Okada, one, when they obviously face off in the G1, I'm interested to see that match, but I'm also interested to see how their bodies fare, specifically at coming straight off of Forbidden Door. Will Ospreay is going to have probably a very physical match. If it's anything like the first one with Kenny Omega, is going to be extremely physical. Same thing for Okada facing Bryan Danielson. So these two are going to have very, very, very physical matchups that are going to go a minimum probably of 25 minutes each. So it's going to be very interesting stuff. We have Taichi. I think Taichi is going to have some really great matches. He's had really great matches this year. Specifically, his matches against Will Ospreay and Shingo Takagi this year have been really good. And also, he's currently holding that King of Pro Wrestling 2023 provisional title. So I'm very interested to see what he does. I don't think he'll win, but I do think that he's going to have some standout matches. Moving into C Block, we have a lot of cool people in here. Some of my favorites, like favorite people to watch, say favorite people that I love their matches, and some of the people that I think really need these wins are in here. So we have David Finley, his first time in here as the leader of the Bullet Club. We have Tomohiro Ishii, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Is he going to win? Probably not, but he's always the MVP. We have Evil. I'm not very happy about that, obviously. We have Tama Tonga, Shingo Takagi, my fave. You know, I'm always down for Shingo doing well. I'm always down for Shingo, getting the win. Um, and we have Aaron Hanare, we have Eddie Kingston, and we have Mikey Nichols. So this is going to be probably the most violent block, hands down. Super exciting. I think that some great matches here. Eddie Kingston versus Shingo Takagi is probably going to rock my world. I'm probably going to cry, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be amazing. I cannot wait. I think Ishii versus Eddie Kingston, this is going to be their third match. They're currently at 1 win apiece, so I'm very excited to see how that goes. I also think that Eddie Kingston and Aaron Hanare are going to have one hell of a match, and I think that Tomohiro Ishii and Aaron Hanare could have one hell of a match. Tama Tonga is really great. I feel like he's very underrated. So I'm interested to see what he does here against some of these hard-hitting opponents. David Finley has a lot to prove. He is trying to prove that he is this violent killer, and there is no better place to prove it than in C Block, because there are some violent killers in C Block. And so I think that this tournament is going to be make or break for him against opponents like Ishii, opponents like Shingo, opponents like Eddie Kingston. So I'm excited. Mikey Nichols, I am interested to see how he does. He's typically a tag team wrestler, obviously, in TMDK. But I think that he's going to have a pretty decent showing. Obviously, I don't expect him to win, but excited to see him there. I love seeing the Aussies taking it over as they have all year. Obviously, Evil, I want nothing for you. I really, 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 really hope that Evil's participation in the G1 Climax is not like Show's participation in the Best of the Super Juniors tournament, which is all these shenanigans and just, I feel like it really just slows down the pace of the tournament. And because we're focused on our wrestling, keep all that extraness out of here. I'm not really here for it, but just knowing how to torture, they're going to do it anyway. So I'm already preparing myself for the bullshit. And then we have D Block. So D Block, I feel like this is where the old guard wins. Well, not wins, but the old guard really is coming out to play. So we have Hiroshi Tanahashi, we have Tetsuya Naito, we have Hiroki Goto, we have Zack Sabre Jr., Toru Yano, Jeff Cobb, Shane Haste, and Alex Coughlin. So Alex Coughlin is the only returning young lion who is going to be in the D Block. Shane Haste, much like Mikey Nichols, this is his first time in the G1 Climax. He's typically a tag team wrestler in TMDK, but this is his first time here as a singles wrestler. I'm excited to see how he does here. I obviously enjoy TMDK as a tag team, so I'm interested to see how they fare competitors. Toru Yano, I feel like everybody on here didn't deserve a spot this year, but whatever. I'll let it go. Um, where I see, yeah, Tanahashi. So somebody said this on Twitter. I forgot who. So please charge it to my head and not my heart. But this is going to be a very interesting year for Tanahashi in the G1. He went from the guy who was obviously for a long time was always the favorite to win it all to now he might be the vet taking pins. This is his 22nd G1, his 22nd consecutive G1 Climax tournament. And so obviously we know that the ace is slowing down. We obviously know that he has more years behind him than ahead of him. He's still able to put on very solid matchups, but I'm interested to see how Father Time. I think that's his biggest matchup this year in the Climax. How does Father Time match up for him? Tetsuya Naito. Um, I think he has obviously he hasn't had as many G1s as Tanahashi. He's had 14 versus Tanahashi's 22, but I think it's a very similar thing of just obviously the guard in New Japan is changing. A lot of young faces are popping up, and so I think that Naito has a lot to prove, especially as it relates to his own faction. When you have somebody like Yota Tsuji, who is clearly looking like he wants to be the guy to take over LIJ eventually, possibly. So very interesting stuff there. Hiroki Goto, much like Tomohiro Ishii, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Although he's won a G1 before, he's never won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, and who knows if he ever will at this point. This is his 16th G1 Climax tournament, his 16th consecutive tournament, and so very interesting. Of course, he's going to be responsible for a lot of great matchups, as he always is. But his chances of actually winning, I think, are very slim to none. I'm looking at Zack Sabre Jr., this is his 7th G1 as well as his 7th consecutive G1. He's currently the New Japan Pro Wrestling World TV Champion. I'm interested to see how close he gets. Obviously, he's been chasing singles gold this year. He's done a fabulous job as the inaugural New Japan Pro Wrestling World TV Champion. He's been defending that title here, there, and everywhere. Probably the second most active champion in pro wrestling right now, right behind Orange Cassidy, as we talk about the number of title defenses. But absolutely fantastic. But obviously, heavyweight gold has always been in his sights since moving to the heavyweight division. And so, if Gato wants to pull, a surprise booking like he did in the Best of Super Junior tournament and finally, give Zack Sabre Jr. a big push, I would not be against it. I love him. I think he's absolutely great. And I feel like he's been one of the best wrestlers in the world. Specifically, he's always been one of the best wrestlers in the world, but specifically this year, he's been on a different level. He's really thrived. And obviously, I think that they've set a hard, I know they've set a hard time limit this year on the G1 just regular matches of 20 minutes. And I think that Zack Sabre Jr., coming off of being New Japan Pro Wrestling World TV Champion, wrestling within those 15-minute time limits, he is more, equipped to get the job done in that time frame than just about anybody else in this tournament. So I think that that's a very interesting wrinkle that maybe a lot of people haven't thought about. So I think it's going to be great. We have Toru Yano. Don't really care. I'm going to be honest, not really moved there. But, we always need some comedic relief. Jeff Cobb is going to be fantastic. Do I expect him to win? No. But I think he's going to have a very strong showing. I've never met a Jeff Cobb match that I didn't like. So I think I'm going to eat very good there. Shane Hayes, like I said, same thing about Mikey Nichols and Alex Coughlin. I already talked about him. So that is D block, C block, B block, and A block. Super exciting stuff. I have already made my way, way, way too early predictions for the top two of each block. So for block A, I have predicted for Kaito Kiyomiya and Yota Tsuji to win. Also, oh, my fault. The top two, so just like they did in Best of Super Juniors, the top two will advance. So it's not just the number one in the block; it's the top two will advance. So I think the top two, um, not putting them in order. I don't know which order they'll finish, but I think the top two of Block A will be Kaito Kiyomiya and Yota Tsuji. I think the top two of Block B will be Kazuchika Okada and Will Ospreay. I think the top two of Block C will be Shingo Takagi and Eddie Kingston. However, Block C is very interesting because I could see David Finlay taking one of those spots. So it's very interesting. I don't know. I think the top three is going to be Shingo, Eddie, and David Finlay. I don't know which two are going to finish first. Obviously, I prefer for it to be Shingo and Eddie Kingston just because I love them. But I do think that it's a good chance that David Finlay does take one of those spots. And for Block D, I do think that Tetsuya Naito and Zack Sabre Jr. will take those top spots. And if I have my way, we're going to end up with some very interesting matchups. So we can possibly end up with Kaito Kiyomiya versus Okada. We can possibly end up with Tetsuya Naito versus Yota Tsuji. Really great stuff. And so I am super excited. Those are two matches that I really want to see this G1. I know everybody's upset that Okada wasn't in the block with all the people who hate him, i.e., Ren Narita, Shota Umino, and Kaito Kiyomiya. I was upset too, but I think that the way that this is happening is probably the best way, just because for these guys to really get all the benefits of the rub of an Okada match, I feel like they have to earn their way to Okada. I get it, even though I would have loved them throwing them in the same block so Okada can beat their asses one by one and they can complain one by one. I get why it's happening the way they do. But out of all of them, Kaito needs that win. I'm sorry. The way that he was been embarrassed this year in front of his home promotion, he is skipping the N1, which is Noah's big tournament, basically the equivalent of the G1, to do the G1. So he's basically, leaving it all behind to get his lick back, essentially. And I gotta respect somebody who's going to get their lick back, and really putting in the work to get their lick back. So this is super exciting stuff. Like I said, probably going to do more in-depth talking about the G1. Probably going to be talking about the G1 for the next 3 months. And honestly, if the matches are really good, probably going to be talking about the G1 for the rest of the year. So don't worry. This is not going to be the last time that I talk about this. But I'm super excited. If you can't tell, this is going to be absolutely incredible. And also, super cool stuff coming up on July 4th and 5th. We have the Independence Day shows for New Japan Pro Wrestling in Korakuen Hall in Japan. I am super excited about these because, one, we have Eddie Kingston is going to face Kenta for the New Japan Strong Openweight Championship. Obviously, if you know anything about Eddie Kingston, it's always been his dream to wrestle in Japan in the same places that his legends, his idols, like the four pillars of Japan wrestled. So wrestling in Korakuen Hall for Eddie is going to be absolutely incredible. I cannot wait to watch and cry. And the huge, crazy tag match. It's like, obviously you can see me smile just thinking about it. We have Jon Moxley. Well, no, let me go back. After wrestling for GCW, was that last week? I don't know. A couple days ago, whatever. El Desperado made a video afterwards, and he's like, you know what? I'm just thirsty for violence, and I need you, Jon Moxley. because obviously these two had a very amazing clash last year, very brutal, what was essentially a death match at Music City Mayhem last year in New Japan, in Tennessee. And he was like, I want to face you. I heard that New Japan Strong has something going on around, July 4th. Let's get active. John Moxley makes a video responding, essentially saying that, hey, I'm always about the violence. Let's go. Let's do a tag match. I'm bringing, homicide. Let's do it. And then it's fucking crazy just thinking about it. But El Desperado goes and finds the craziest motherfucker he can find. He finds the crazy monkey, Jun Kasai, after they had the craziest, nuttiest match ever last year. I personally just saw it a couple of days ago, and my jaw was on the floor. It was absolutely incredible. Shout out to my friends over at We Work Stiff saying that it was the 2022 match of the year. I can completely understand why you believe that, because it was insane. But he asked them to team up. Obviously, Crazy Monkey has not 100% confirmed. He said he needs time to think on it, but he said when he gives his answer, it's going to knock everything out of the park. So I just know that when he answers, he's going to add some crazy stipulation on it or bring something crazy into it. It's just going to be freaking bonkers. I think that show is going to be incredible. Hopefully they can get Willow in there to defend her New Japan Strong women's title. I would love to see her go head to head with Micah, because, hey, Micah's been killing it lately. Great stuff coming up in Stardom. We have that also on the same day as Forbidden Door, so we probably won't get any Stardom involvement in Forbidden Door, boo. But there's going to be some great matches on that card for Stardom, especially we have Queen's Quest versus Odio Tai in a cage match, and the last person left has to leave their faction. Obviously, there has been a lot of dissension within Queen's Quest lately. Utami and Saya are not getting along. Nobody really even knows how Azumi feels ever since she lost her high-speed championship. On the other side, Odio Tai has been a well-oiled machine. Apparently, they don't have any problems, but Momo Watanabe has been very quiet lately. So there's a lot of moving parts. And then, obviously, for the Goddess of Stardom Championships, you have Mariah May and Mina Shirakawa are challenging for those belts. And they've really been torturing those girls, talking about how Mariah, and her partner just don't have, they keep getting opportunities and they have no charisma and they bring nothing to the table, and it's just been really nasty, really rude, just really nasty across the board. And so I'm super excited. Like I said, I probably won't get to actually watch the match for much long, until I would say maybe probably the next day, simply because I will be in Toronto for Forbidden Door. Super excited about that. But I am very much so looking forward to everything's going to happen. I think that Stardom is in a really interesting place right now. I have agreed with most of the decisions that they've made this year. However, I will say I still don't understand the timing of how the whole Tam Mina thing happened. Like, I get that maybe even if, Tam decides to, retire next year, I get it. Go Tam, woohoo, like, love her. However, Mina had fought so hard and just went through this full, like, personality shift, and like this complete career resurgence, new faction, new look, new attitude, all of these different things. Like, I just don't understand her not winning. Like, I just don't understand her not winning that match. But No, it's not that I don't understand her not winning that match. I just don't understand. It could have just gone to a draw. Like, like, why does she have to lose the white belt now? Like, she only had one successful defense. Was it a great defense against Matt Sport? Absolutely. Fantastic defense. But I just don't really understand why it had to happen that way. But yeah, we shall see how it all turns out. They have a 6-woman tag coming up. Tam and Natsupoi, and Kyrie versus Micah Suzu and May Sarah at that Stardom Sunshine card on June 25th, which is the same day as Forbidden Door. So, interesting stuff happening there. And also, there's going to be a very great match. 6-woman tag team match for the Artist Stardom Championship, which is also going to be in a steel cage. And so we have Julia Thekla and Mai Sakurai, the lady, the one who always calls us poor, I love her, versus Stars, Mayu Iwatani, and Hazuki and Kaguma. So very, very cool stuff coming in from Stardom. I'm super excited. I can't wait to probably watch most of it in the airport when I'm coming back from Toronto. But yeah, there's really exciting stuff happening across the board. I'm excited about pro wrestling, AEW, New Japan, Stardom, Noah. Places are kicking it, knocking it out of the park. Super great stuff. And also, thank you for all of you who've been supporting my writing. I have been writing a lot lately for Women's Wrestling Talk Pod. Lots of great stuff. This week, I released an article talking about why I believe that Athena is the strongest world champion in the world today, regardless of gender. And she retweeted it. So shout out to Athena, the fallen goddess, for uplifting that. And I have so much more to share. So many great surprises and things that I've been working on, and I cannot wait to share and tell all of you. But yeah, that's all I got for right now. It's almost midnight here, so I'm going to get off of this podcast. But once again, thank you so much for everybody who continues to support all of this work and continues to love mapping and grapping. Until next time, I'm your host, Lyric Swinton, and I will talk to you all next week and gush over, hopefully, the final Forbidden Door card at that point. Goodbye and good night.